topic that I'm covering, the Portfolio Waterfall, may very well be the coolest and most important topic that I have covered to date on this podcast. And to get us started, I'm going to tell a quick story that's going to help us open our minds to the new system and strategy here. This story is one that I heard back in school. I was a member of Tau Beta Pi, and they had a leadership workshop on brainstorming in particular that students went through. This is a well-known real story that is shared not only through this program, but other leadership programs that focuses on making sure that ideas don't get shot down, and how in the brainstorming process, we are open to things that might even seem silly as we strive to improve existing solutions that have not changed forever or solve problems that no one has ever solved before. The story starts like this. Imagine you're in Alaska and there are towns that are remote. You have to go miles before you find another population center of any sort. And to get power out to these towns, you need to run power lines through just acres of wild, dense Alaskan forests. As you can imagine, it's extra important to keep the power on in the winter. And unfortunately, that's where this problem begins. You see, in the wintertime, ice forms on the power lines, weighs them down, and breaks them. And because these power lines are in the forest, they are difficult to get to. It is hard to not only restore power, but maintain these power lines. And nobody had a solution, so they brought in a brainstorming consultant. He said, as a part of this exercise, we need to think of anything that can help us keep the ice from breaking the power lines. Does anyone have any ideas for us to get started? And nobody would speak up. Everyone was afraid that their idea would get shot down. They didn't think that they had ideas that were actually going to work. They were kind of puzzling in their own minds, and they were not exercising brainstorming. They weren't taking advantage of the collaboration and understanding that could happen if they all got talking. This went on until the first recess, and the consultant, frustrated, goes to the restroom. Now, while he's in the restroom, he hears the janitor talking. The janitor had overheard what was going on, what little he did hear, because there wasn't a lot of conversation going on. And he jokingly told the consultant, how about we hire the bears in the woods to just knock the power lines free of ice for us? You know, they're already out there, then we don't have to take a truck out. It was a joke, but the consultant was excited. The consultant takes the janitor to the front of the room after the recess is over and with enthusiasm asks the janitor to share his idea with the rest of the group. The janitor is very taken back because it was just a joke, but he tells everyone, how about we get the bears to knock the power lines free? We hire them. And now, following the rules that they have, you're not supposed to shoot this idea down as silly. You're supposed to just continue with the idea and try to be creative around it. Someone else spoke up and says, well, how are we going to get our bears that we hire up to the power lines? This naturally begged the question, well, what do bears like? The next person to speak up must have been a Winnie the Pooh fan because he said, bears like honey, right? So what we need to do is put honey on the tops of all the power lines ahead of a storm so that as ice builds up, the bears are going to climb up the power lines one at a time to get the pots of honey. And while it might not seem obvious, they were getting somewhere. The question now is, how do we get the pots of honey onto the power lines when it's already difficult to get out there? Well, the next idea that came up was to get someone on a ladder hanging off a helicopter to place the honey pots on each of the power lines. Someone in the room who was familiar with flying helicopters said, you're going to have a hard time keeping the honey pot balanced because there's a significant downdraft from the helicopter, and after you place it, as you fly off to the next power pole, you might knock it off. I can't remember how conversation exactly carried on from here, but that was the pinnacle point that ended up solving their problem. They came back to it and said, wait, if there's a significant downdraft from the helicopter blades, and it would disrupt a honey pot if we put it on there, can't we just take the helicopter, occasionally, fly low over the power lines, and the downdraft from the helicopter will shake the ice off of them as it builds up and keep them from getting broken? And this is still the same solution that they use today. Seriously, they solved the problem of frequent and difficult to remedy power outages in Alaska through a brainstorming session where someone suggested that they hire bears. Now, hiring bears is absurd, but the point of this story is some ideas that could be presented to us, we may dismiss right away. We might shoot them down. However, They could solve problems or improve the way that we utilize systems that we genuinely understand in our day to day. And this is going to be essentially what the Portfolio Waterfall does for your retirement. You see, Josh Curtis gave me a phone call after my infamous conversation with Dave Ramsey on the 2nd of November, 2023. And when I first heard about the strategy, I was a little skeptical, but I was open minded to hearing about it and trying to understand how it worked. And to my joy, what I have to share with you in the main topic is very cool.